You know, for the longest time, if you were building an API, REST was pretty much the only game in town. It was the undisputed king. But today's world, with its massive microservices and data-hungry mobile apps, is demanding a whole lot more. So what we're going to do today is dive into two really powerful alternatives that are changing the game, gRPC and GraphQL. All right, so what gives? Why are huge companies like Google, Netflix, and Meta looking beyond REST? This is the big question we're going to unpack. And let's be clear, it's not that REST is suddenly bad. It's just that the world it lives in has gotten way, way more complicated. And that's where we start to see the cracks in the armor. For years, REST's biggest strength was its one-size-fits-all approach. But now, under the weight of modern apps, that's kind of becoming its Achilles heel.
Okay, but first, let's give credit where credit is due. REST is, well, it's brilliant in its simplicity, right? It's built on HTTP, the basic language of the internet that every browser and server already gets. And for a long, long time, that was all we needed. I mean, a huge chunk of the web we use every single day is built on this foundation.
But then, things changed. Suddenly, we have these massive microservice architectures and super demanding mobile apps that are just hungry for data. And that simple, clean model REST had, well, it started to stretch and stretch until it was ready to snap. Let me show you a classic example. Okay, so picture this. You've got a mobile app, super simple. All it needs to do is show a user's name on the screen. So naturally, it makes a totally standard bread and butter REST call. Get me the data for user 123. Easy, right? Well, maybe not. And bam, here's the problem. The server doesn't just send back the name. Oh no, it sends back everything it knows about that user. Their ID, name, email, address, a whole list of their friends, all their recent posts. This, my friends, is called overfetching. It's like you asked for a sip of water and the server turned on a fire hose and pointed it at your face. You can see it right here, plain as day. On the left, you've got this flood of data the server is sending. But on the right, that's all our app actually needed, just the name. All that extra junk, it's just chewing up bandwidth and draining the phone's battery. That's a huge no-no, especially when you're on a spotty mobile connection. And overfetching is just the start of it. REST has other problems. You've also got performance issues. JSON is just text, and parsing text is actually pretty slow for a computer. Then there's streaming. Want real-time data? Good luck. REST just wasn't built for that. And maybe the biggest headache of all, there's no strict, mandatory contract. So one team can change something, not tell anyone, and suddenly everything breaks. All right, so that brings us to solution number one, which was basically built from the ground up for this new world of microservices. Meet gRPC. Think of it as the secret, high-speed pneumatic tube system that connects all the different parts of your application's back office. It's not for the public, it's for your services to talk to each other fast. So what exactly is gRPC? Well, it's a high-performance framework that came out of Google, and it's used by huge companies like Netflix and Uber. The magic here is twofold. First, it uses HTTP/2, which is way more efficient. And second, it uses something called protocol buffers, or Protobuf. Just think of Protobuf as a super compressed binary version of JSON. It's not human readable, but man, is it fast for computers to process. Okay, so how does it work in practice? Well, instead of making a regular old HTTP request, one service basically just calls a function on another service, almost like it's right there on the same machine. But under the hood, that simple function call gets packed into that tiny binary format and shot across a super efficient connection. The result? It's ridiculously fast. We're talking anywhere from 3 to even 7 times faster than a similar REST call. That's a massive difference. But honestly, the real superpower of gRPC might be streaming. You see, REST is stuck in this old loop. You ask a question, you get an answer. With gRPC, you can open up a continuous, two-way conversation where data can just flow back and forth. This is an absolute game changer for things like live chats or stock tickers, stuff REST really struggles with. Okay, so if gRPC is the ultimate tool for super fast internal communication, what about the external side? What about those mobile apps? Well, that's where our second solution, GraphQL, comes in. And it's all about flexibility. It completely flips the traditional model on its head. With GraphQL, the client is in charge. GraphQL was born at Meta, Facebook, and it's now used by tons of places like GitHub and Shopify. At its core, it's a query language for your API. The name says it all, right? The client gets to build a very specific query,
asking for exactly the data it needs and absolutely nothing more.
So let's go back to that overfetching nightmare we had with REST. With GraphQL, the client sends a query that's super specific. It says, hey, I want user 123, but listen up, I only want the name and the email. That's it. Don't send me anything else.
And would you look at that response? It's beautiful. It's a perfect mirror image of the query. Just the name, just the email. No extra junk, no wasted bandwidth. The client got exactly what it asked for. Problem solved. And here's another thing that developers absolutely love. With REST, you can end up with hundreds of endpoints, /users, /posts, /users, /123 comments. It can become a real mess. But with GraphQL, you typically just have one single endpoint. One. It makes managing the API so much simpler.
Okay, so we've seen the problem with REST, and we've looked at two very different solutions. Now let's do a proper showdown. Let's put all three of them, REST, gRPC, and GraphQL, head-to-head.
All right, let's break down this comparison. REST, our baseline, uses standard HTTP and plain old JSON, simple and universal. gRPC kicks it up a notch with HTTP2 and that super fast binary protobuf, which is why it's so perfect for internal microservices. And GraphQL, it also speaks JSON, but its superpower is giving that query power directly to the client apps. And here's a really important point. See how both gRPC and GraphQL have a mandatory schema or contract? That's huge. It prevents a ton of the oops, something broke errors that are so common with REST.
And if you're still wondering about speed, well, this chart says it all. When it comes to that internal back-end communication, there is just no contest. gRPC is in a completely different league. That combo of binary data and HTTP/2 makes it the undisputed champion of performance. So after all that, which one should you pick? REST, gRPC, GraphQL? Well, the real answer is, that's the wrong question. The smart way to think about this is like a toolbox. You wouldn't use a hammer to drive a screw, right? It's all about picking the right tool for the specific job you're doing. So, first off, don't write REST's obituary just yet. It is still an absolutely fantastic choice when simplicity is your #1 priority. If you're building a public API that anyone and everyone needs to be able to connect to easily, or you're just doing basic data operations, REST is often still the simplest and best way to go. Now, you're going to reach for gRPC when you're building the internal plumbing of your system. When you've got a bunch of microservices that need to be constantly chattering back and forth and every millisecond of latency counts, gRPC is your go-to. It's built for that raw internal speed. And finally, you'll want to pull GraphQL out of your toolbox when you're dealing with the front end, the part your users actually see and interact with. For any mobile or web application with complex data needs, where you absolutely cannot afford to overfetch data and you want to give your front-end developers freedom to innovate quickly, GraphQL is, without a doubt, the perfect fit. And really, that's the key takeaway here. It's not about REST versus gRPC versus GraphQL. The truth is, the most advanced systems out there today don't pick one. They often use all three. They might use REST for their public-facing API, gRPC as the lightning-fast backbone for all their internal services, and GraphQL to serve up data flexibly to their mobile and web apps. So the question you should be asking isn't which one is the best. It's which one is the right one for this specific job.